I wanted to share with you this clip of Alan Greenspan. See, this is part I'm trying to explain. How did we get into this thing, right? How did we get here? This economic disaster.
So, this is Tom Woods. I've previously taken the piss out of him in a video before that I found thanks to Right Wing Watch, where he claims that the Libertarian Party is a scam, but I recently found his channel and holy shit. I think I just discovered the biggest illiterate douche on the airways.
And yeah, Reaganomics, easy answer, but the core foundation of Reaganomics comes out of libertarianism.
See what I mean? And this isn't an anomaly. This level of historical, economic, illiterate nonsense is featured in every video. This guy is like Steve Shives of economics. Reagan increased the total amount of regulations on the books by 30%. He increased government spending by 68%, and he increased the deficit from $74 billion to $200 billion. And he increased the size of taxes. Reaganomics did nothing but increase the size of government in the market to establish monopolization, which is and has been the typical Republican economic policy since at least Herbert Hoover. And this is in direct contrast with libertarian economic policy, which isn't even a policy at all, but it's rather the complete lack of a policy, and for the economy to not be manipulated by the force of the state in any way, shape, or form. To say that Reaganomics came from libertarianism is absolute nonsense, and the only reason you think that, Tom, is because you're a scrub who doesn't have the slightest clue about what you're talking about, yet because of your pomposity, you still think your opinion is valid. You just approach both libertarians and Republicans thinking, oh, well, they're both talking about the markets, guess that means they're the same. Duh. God, you're fucking pathetic.
Which was founded in 1946 by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Libertarianism was founded in 1946 by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Holy fucking shit. Like, there's literally not a single aspect of that statement that's correct. Historically, the word libertarian originates from the French press during the mid-1800s after the government censored the word anarchist or any mention of anarchism. Libertarianism economics in its current form as we know them in the U.S. date back mostly to the 16, 17, and 1800s with figures such as John Locke, Frederick Bastiat, Adam Smith, or Voltaire. I think he might be trying to mention the FEE, which was founded by a former member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce named Leonard Reed, but that's a stupid argument and it's been debunked time and time again. Laissez-faire libertarianism roots back to Enlightenment thinkers, as previously noted, but was pushed into popularity in libertarian politics by Austrian Chicago school economists such as Ludwig von Mises or Milton Friedman.
As a way of giving a philosophical and political rationale to letting businesses run the government, basically to fascism.
Oh God, we're not even at his argument yet, and this video is causing me physical pain.
And objectivism, which was Ayn Rand's personal variation of the same thing, which was that, you know, the billionaires in the marketplace will always do the right thing, and workers are stupid and shouldn't have any say in things.
And you can't have a leftist critique of free market economics without a fundamental misunderstanding of how the market regulates itself through competition. Anyway, I don't know where the hell he got the part about billionaires running the government or how libertarians supposedly think that workers are stupid. We're talking about things that libertarians and objectivists actually advocate here, Tom. No libertarian has ever said or implied either of those two things. How do I know that? Because libertarianism fundamentally rejects the concept of government by principle, you fucking moron.
And that democracy is a bad thing. Objectivists and libertarians do not believe in democracy. And that's not a slur, it's simply a simple statement of fact.
That's because democracy is involuntary and forceful by its very nature. All democracy does is impose the will of the majority of people onto a minority. Since it's a system of arbitration, it requires a government to uphold it. Since it's a system which legitimizes the initiation of force, self-ownership has to be suppressed, and therefore individuals must logically submit to the rulers, in this case the majority vote. It's a system which inherently infers that might makes right. I mean, holy fuck. I could go on about the many reasons why democracy is bad, but enslaving people and initiating violence against people and requiring a massive apparatus to enforce arbitration seems pretty damning enough.
And he absolutely believed that when counterparties is the economic word for the two people in a economic transaction, buyer and seller, that when counterparties saw bad behavior, that they would immediately change their behavior.
It's called competition. Every school of economics recognizes it, and it self-evidently exists.
His philosophy was that the government had no business whatsoever regulating banks, because if the banks behaved badly, people wouldn't want to work with them, and they'd go out of business. That the market would automatically and naturally fix itself. The magic of the marketplace.
You mean to tell me you don't even understand one of the main factors behind how the market establishes price ratios, and yet you're going to try and lecture us on economics? Oh, no.
And when the crash happened in 2008, which was clearly driven not by any legislation that Jimmy Carter ever proposed, but by banksters.
Gonna have to stop you right there because you're already dead wrong. The market crash in 2008 was caused by the government guaranteeing loans which incentivized banks to give loans to people who couldn't pay them back, among many other factors, but that was the main one.
Because for 70 years, we'd had this very stable mortgage market. There was a predictable number of mortgages out there. And the Commodity Futures Trading Act allowed bankers to start creating a brand new product called derivatives, but they had to have an underlying value to derive from, which was a mortgage. So with a single mortgage, a couple $100,000 mortgage on a house, they could create tens of millions of dollars in profits.
Yeah, that's not the market. That's the government. You yourself just said it was the government. A law caused it. So you have no excuse now. And are you seriously dense enough that you're trying to say libertarians supported this? Have you ever actually fucking listened to a real libertarian? We hate bailouts as much as you do.
With these derivatives. But they had to have the mortgage. So they started, and so Greenspan basically deregulated the banks. He said, we're going to ignore the oversight.
What the fuck are you even talking about? He didn't deregulate anything. In fact, the reason this happened is because he introduced new laws. If the market was unregulated, we wouldn't even be having these problems.
And so the banks, there was such a demand for mortgages because the banks could turn these into derivatives, into trillions of dollars of derivatives. They needed billions of dollars worth of mortgages. And the mortgage market was stable. And so they had to create mortgages out of thin air. And so they basically said to the loan originators, to the countrywides of the world, just loan to anybody. I don't care. Loan to anybody. I just need the mortgage. I'll pay you a commission off the top. I'll buy the mortgage from you the day after you originated. So you don't have to worry about the fact that the guy that you just gave that mortgage to, there's no way he can pay it back. We'll take the risk. Because we're going to make millions of dollars on this $100,000 mortgage. So if this mortgage goes bad, we'll just pay it off. It's no problem.
If your explanation had only been of this law and what you've just spent the last 30 seconds explaining, and you didn't try and lump the banks or capitalism into this, you would have been spot on.
This is really how it happened. And when it crashed, what had happened was the banksters has taken so much of that money out of the system that they couldn't pay those mortgages back. Or they wouldn't. Jamie Dimon and Lloyd Blankfein, they didn't want to give back their $100 million, their $10 million, $5 million, whatever. They didn't want to give back their multi-million-dollar paychecks. And so instead, they went to our government hat in hand, and George Bush wrote him a check for $700 billion.
Oh, God. If he tries to claim that that's what libertarians would have supported, I fucking swear to God.
Excuse me, 700. Yeah, 700 billion, not million, billion. So anyhow, here's what Alan Greenspan had to say. Now that you know what the word counterparties means, this will probably make a little more sense. Just listen to this.
And libertarians heavily criticize Greenspan's economic policies and regard him as a terrible chairman. You think Ayn Rand would have supported synthetically low mortgages? You're out of your fucking mind. Alright, well, you clearly need to look into what libertarians believe, Tom, because you have no idea, specifically in regard to the non-aggression principle. And yes, the original video will be in the description of this video because I cut out the end because it's irrelevant, but I want y'all to be able to see it and know that I'm not taking anything important out. Alright, well, I'll see you all next time.